Thank you for joining this week's talk on the Torah portion of Emor that we are reading in Chutz La'aretz in the diaspora this coming Shabbos. And the interesting that we start the Sedra with Emor. I've often commented that the Sedra begins with the first non-general word, the first specific word, as a way that we actually have a lesson to learn, and it's not something that is a generic word in the Torah. And in common with the opening Sedra and the name of the book of Vayikra, which means and he called, which seems to be a very general sounding word. This word, the Sedra of Emor, starts with a similar general sounding word, and both of them are expressions of speech. And although there are many different elements in this week's Sedra, there is a connecting theme that I think we can trace. And it starts with the speech of Emor. We'll look at the particular nuances that Rashi picks up on in this first pasuk. And it ends with an episode of speech in a very, very different context. And it shows us, I think, within that framework, how there are so many different ways and capacities that we can bring the Marbe Kavod Shemaim, it's called, which literally means to increase the glory of Hashem in the heavens. Shemaim is the heavens. And we have the capacity in various different roles among individuals, and the people of Israel are divided into three groups: Kohanim, Leviim, and Yisraelim, priests, the Levites, and the Israelites. And although it is a hierarchy, and although the priests are in that particular hierarchy the top, and they are the servants of Hashem, we have been told that we are a kingdom of priests and a holy nation. And so, although we don't have the specific role of the priests, and we'll come to the laws that in detail apply only to the priestly caste, but we have this capacity for Kedusha, for holiness. We are all considered avodim, servants of Hashem, and we all have access and responsibility and obligation to holiness. And I think I would like to actually point out the Vayikra in this theme of having a general word really at the beginning of the Sedra, and which becomes the word for that we refer to the whole book by. And this Vayikra, and he called. And I think that this concept of a vocation, an actual calling, which comes up in our Sedra of Emor this week as well. And we know sometimes in certain professions, two professions that spring to my mind are doctor and teacher, and you have individuals where they are not just doing a job. They have a calling, they have a vocation, they have such a commitment and a love of what they're doing, and they do it with such a full heart that it is above and beyond what is expected and what may be generally found in the rest of the members of that particular profession. And I think that this is really a call to all of us, that we should try to reach those levels and hear that calling and respond to that calling. And it is, as I said, I will come to that in certain sections of this Sedra that we're reading of Emor. But the opening point of Emor in terms of say, this word has been used in a way that describes Amira Raka, which means soft, gentle speech. And the reason that this would be, this tone, this more gentle tone, would be used in this case is because the opening pasuk, the opening verse is telling us that picking up on a certain repetition in the words, that gentle tones are going to be used. And we'll just see how Rashi fits that in. I'm reading the first pasuk, which is chapter 21, verse 1, Vayomer Hashem el Moshe, and Hashem says to Moshe, Emor el HaKohanim, speak to the Kohanim, Bnei Aaron, the sons of Aaron, Va'amarta alehem, and you will say to them, Lenefesh lo yitama va'amav. He will not become impure among his people. And the Pesukim then continue to outline the fact that a Kohen cannot come into contact with a dead body, and a Kohen only with the exception of the members of his immediate family, and the Kohen Gadol, the high priest, and the requirements are even more stringent, and he is not even allowed to come into contact with members of his immediate family who have passed away. And this is exceptional for the Kohanim, and the halacha, the law actually for the rest of the community of Israel, is that they should come into contact with the dead body when the circumstances require it, and they should for members of their immediate family. The exception is for the Kohanim who are on call to serve in the Mishkan and the Beis Hamikdash, and the special rules protecting them from this form of tumah apply to them alone. And Rashi picks up on the fact that we've got Emor va'amarta, because the pasuk could have said, from an expression or a flow point of view, just say to the Kohanim, Lenefesh lo yitama ba'amav. They, for a dead person, they should not come in, they should not become tameh. But it says, Emor el HaKohanim va'amarta alehem, and you will say to them. So Rashi picks up on this. Why does this repetition occur? Lahazhir gedolim, to warn the adults, the majors, al haktanim, with regards to the minors, with regards to the children. And this is taken as an instruction that these rules will apply to the younger Kohanim as well. And this is really, in some ways, the principles are broadened out to apply to non-Kohanim as well. This is a requirement of education, that all of adults are in a position of potential influence, and with their words, with the way that they say these words, they are able to have an impact on the younger generation. And this is something that is so crucial for us to remember. And again, it is focusing on the gift of speech, on the tones that we use to give over a message. And although we have this very good parenting or educational concept of do as I do, not do as I say, but equally we communicate with words, and the words that we use and the way that we use them are very important, and especially when it comes to giving over a message and transmitting the words and the values of the Torah. It's something that we really need to put a lot of energy and effort and scrutiny to make sure that they are the appropriate words said in the appropriate way. And this message comes through very, very clearly, and is really setting us up at the beginning of the Sedra with the positive potential of speech and how it should be used in this context. And the Sedra then continues through a variety of what seem to be unconnected topics. And we have the instructions to the Kohanim, to the priests that I just mentioned, and then we continue. There are certain Kohanim who are not allowed to serve because they have blemishes, they have certain physical defects that mean that they are not eligible to serve as Kohanim for the Avodah. And then certain sacrifices, again, that have blemishes, and so they are not going to be able to be used as sacrifices. And then we seem to follow into a completely unrelated topic of a list of, first of all, Shabbos, and then the various festivals that we celebrate. We have Rosh Hashanah and Yom Kippur. We have Pesach, Shavuot, and Sukkot, and then we have also at a time of year that we say the actual passage that we read in the Sedra, the Omer count, which is not technically a festival. Although I think that, especially as we read the passage in this week's Sedra, we really do feel that the Omer is that connecting time between Pesach and Shavuot, almost like Chol HaMoed that we have for Pesach and for Sukkot, that we have the sort of intermediary days that connect the first and the last days of the festival. So it's as if that entire well, it's not quite so. It would be from the second day of the Omer count, from the first day of the Omer count, which is the second day of Pesach. Then we have this connector to Shavuot. So it is a way of really joining the festivals of Pesach and Shavuot through the count of the Omer, and then after the detailed descriptions of the festivals, then we come to the menorah, mention of the menorah, and the bread, the showbread that was laid out on the table, and the flowing from the instructions to the Kohanim, to the priests. That is, although it's referring to the priests, it is showing us how we are bringing Hashem's glory. I said at the outset, Marbe Kavod Shamayim, this idea of the glory of Hashem found in space, found in the place of the Mishkan, through the servants that have been designated with a particular avoda, with a Kohanim, that is where we are involved. Although if we are not Kohanim, we are still part of the whole experience of the Mishkan, because we are the ones who are bringing the Karbanot. We are interacting with the Kohanim. It is very much of a whole people experience, even though the Kohanim are the ones, as it were, in charge. And then when we come onto the section about Shabbos and the festivals, we see how we are bringing the glory of Hashem in time, and all of the from Shabbos on a weekly cycle through to the festivals, which are an annual cycle. We have points, we have signposts in the year, and Rabbi Sachs, Zatzal, in his book Judaism's Life-Changing Experiences, was mentioning how, as a mission statement, when a nation has a calendar, and when that calendar is really, I would say, regularly spaced with particular dates in the diary that commemorate specific events, that is the way that we bring the glory of Hashem. We follow his instructions, and we bring the glory of Hashem into our lives, into our world, through the medium of time. And it's very interesting because we have the fact that we've got in this section, in this week's Sedra, that deals with the Moadim, which deals with Shabbos and the Moadim, so it deals with Shabbos and all of the festivals. It calls them Mikroe Kodesh, holy callings, and it is this is in chapter 23. I'll start with verse 2. Daber el bnei Yisrael, speak to the children of Israel. Va'omarta alehem, you will say to them, Moadei Hashem, the appointed times of Hashem, asher tikra'u osom, that you will call Mikroi Kodesh home. They are holy callings. Moadai, they are my appointed times. And so in contrast to Shabbos, which is the Shabbos on a weekly basis that commemorates the Shabbos of creation, that is fixed by Hashem, that is over and above any human involvement. And there's a debate in the Gemara if somebody is on a desert island and they have no idea what day it is, then do they first keep Shabbos and then 6 days followed by Shabbos again, or do they have 6 days and then Shabbos? Because Shabbos exists irrespective of human calculation. Not so the festivals. Hashem is saying to us, we have to call them. It is through the medium in the time of the Eidim, of the witnesses of Rosh Chodesh, when the new moon was sighted and the Beis Din would announce that was the beginning of the month. It was the people who were actually establishing, as it were, that new month. And this is why the phrase says, Asher tikru osom, that you will call them. That is our human input. But we are bringing Hashem into the time of our lives. It's not just about history and commemoration. It's about reliving it. And so this is Hashem, this is how we are Marbek Vod Shemaim in time, in this week's Sedra, in the structure of this week's Sedra. So it would seem that the mention of the menorah and of the showbread does not really fit in with this pattern at all. In a way that I pointed out, space for the Kohanim and the Mishkan and all of the service, Mishkan and Beis Hamikdash, and then time, Hashem, holiness in time. How can I continue that theme for the section in this week's Sedra that deals with the menorah and the showbread, which seem to belong more to the Sedras of Teruma, Tetzaveh, Vayakhel, Pekudei at the end of the book of Shemos. And so I think that there is one word that connects the themes of the menorah and the bread to this idea of Marbe Kavod Shemayim, and that is the word Tomid. And we can just find those words in the section which begins in chapter 24. So I'll start with 24 verse 2. Tzav es b'nei Yisrael, command the children of Israel, v'yikchu elecha shemen zayis zoch kosis lama'ar, and they should take for you clear olive oil crushed for lighting, lahalos ner tomid, to ignite the lamp continually. And then, with regards to the shtei halechem, to the loaves, we have this is chapter 24, verse 8. B'yom hashabbos, b'yom hashabbos, and I'm going to translate it literally. On the Sabbath day, or on the Sabbath day, Ya'archenu lifnei Hashem tomid. You should place it before Hashem continually, and this is telling us that from one Shabbos to the next Shabbos, the loaves stayed, and then they were replaced by the new loaves, but they were always fresh. There was this sense of continuity, and I think that what the focus in this Sedra of these two objects, of the menorah and the challah, the showbreads, is that it is a continuous requirement, a continuous source of light, and a continuous source of freshness. And this is something that we need to incorporate into our lives, and that is going to enable us to really bring and increase that sense of Hashem's glory in this world. And this the way it's leads into the last section. I mentioned that the Sedra begins with speech, Emor va'amarta, and how speech used in an elevated way, used to communicate to the young people, to the next generation, that passing on of a tradition, that the fact that the older generation are the teachers, are the instructors, and are respected by the younger generation who listen to them. And this is a really elevated way of speech. What happens, very shockingly, at the end of the Sedra, and I'm going to just hold up the tikkun, which is how it looks in the Chumash, or rather in the actual Torah. So if we have, right, so here, I'm going to hold this up. This section over here is the section that talks about the showbreads. And then over here, this word, vayetze, which comes after a closed gap in the Sedra, which means it's a subsection, if you like. It kind of is connected in some way to the previous section. And that goes on to describe a very unfortunate incident when there was a dispute in the camp, and somebody ended up by cursing the name of Hashem. And here we have that use of speech in this shocking and negative way. And the rabbis, because these two sections are not completely separated, it's only it's like a midsection break, that one of the suggestions as to what was the actual text of what words did this person say that constituted the blasphemy. And he was ridiculing this idea that the showbreads had to stay on the shulchan, the table, the whole week, and they stayed fresh. And he was making light of it, as it were. And he was saying, oh, that's nonsense, it can't possibly be true, it's not scientific, it's not capable of proof, it's not true. And this is one opinion of the blasphemy that was uttered. And I think that if we look at the words very carefully, I talked about this idea of kovod shamayim, of the different ways that we bring down the glory of Hashem from the heavens into our world. And the word kavod also shares kaved. It's the same letters as the word kaved, which is heavy. And heavy in the sense not of burdensome, but heavy in the sense of the weight of dignity. And the word, we call him the makalel. The person who blasphemes in Hebrew is called the makalel. And the word kal means light. And so what the makalel did, and however, whatever the interpretation, whatever the suggestion of the actual words of his blasphemy, he was making light. And in the Sedra that we read, that shows us in space, through the service of the Kohanim in the Mishkan and the Mikdash, through time, through Shabbos and the Chagim, how there is such exquisite opportunity, structure, perfection for us to develop this relationship with Hashem. And then, instead of really giving and increasing that honor and that kaved, that weight of honor, this is unfortunately what happens when somebody goes and uses his words, and makes light, kal. He whether it's with mockery or whether it's just denying the truth, but it is the opposite of everything that we are trying to achieve, everything that we have been given as tools to achieve these goals. The makalel in a way is standing in sort of complete contrast to everything. And so it is actually with this um, with this end note in the Sedra of this week that we realize that we have tremendous potential, but with it comes responsibility. And we have to work on ourselves. We have to work on ourselves to see the truth, to see the reality, to see the capacity and the potential in the service of the Mishkan and the service of the Mikdash and the in the Shabbos and in the Moadim, and also in the Tamid, in the eternal flame and the constantly fresh the Shtei Halechem, and apply those messages and those lessons in our lives. And really, the very tragic episode of the Makalel is there to show us that if the consequences, the brutal consequences, and the people had to stone the Makalel, and this is something that is not we don't read about this in such a context, and the law was actually brought down with in this instance. Moshe says, I will have to go and ask Hashem what to do, that such a thing had never happened. But this is the capacity for speech that we have, and the responsibility that it brings with it, that we are going to take the lesson and the example of the Kohanim at the beginning of the Sedra. And although they are told that the older Kohanim have to instruct the younger Kohanim, this is something that we can use as a general application in our lives, that more senior members of our community are in a position of responsibility, and we are the ones who are setting the example and transmitting that message to future generations. So all of these thoughts and connections that we can find in this week's Sedra, as we realize that the words and the messages of the Torah are so relevant to us at all times, and we are able to be uplifted and also follow the schedule literally that we have. We have the schedule of Shabbos and of the annual cycle of the Chagim, but also the structure that gives us the most positive way to live ourselves and also impact on all those around us. Thank you very much for listening.